Hello, and welcome to a book reading podcast where I will be reading some paragraphs from books from my bookshelf. The first book is 59 Seconds, Think a Little, Change a Lot. This is by Professor Richard Wiseman. The general format of these book podcasts will be me reading or summarizing interesting paragraphs from the introduction and a few pages from the first chapter, and then using my random number generator app to choose a random page from the book to then just conclude that particular book. And I will be choosing a few books for each episode of the book podcast. So it's really a way for me to get back into reading. I have a lot of books on my bookshelf, and I kind of have this ridiculous anxiety about wanting to read all the books that I own before I die, which I know sounds really morbid, but also I just want to improve my reading concentration because it's really gone downhill. And I used to be able to read for ages when I was really young. So I just want to start practicing reading and improving my reading concentration. So I'm just going to give myself a little attainable task. So the idea is that if you give yourself a little task and you accomplish it, it makes you feel good, and then it makes you want to do it again and again. So if I just say to myself, I only need to read a page or a couple of pages from a book, or several different books to just kind of mix it up and keep it interesting. That's something I feel like, oh yeah, I can do that. Instead of telling myself, oh, you have to read one full chapter or you have to read for half an hour or 1 hour a day. So yeah, so let's get started. Thanks for listening to this podcast, by the way. I really appreciate your time and attention because time is the most important commodity we have, because you can never get it back. So I appreciate you listening to me rambling. And I hope you can get something out of it, something of value, because I really do want to share the words of wisdom from these books. Okay, let's get started. So from the introduction, so he cites a very famous study conducted at Harvard University. You might have heard about it, how they gave half the residents of a nursing home a plant to look after, and the other group, they were told, the staff will take care of it, so don't worry about it. It's not your responsibility. And after 6 months, they found that the residents who weren't given the responsibility of looking after a plant were significantly less happy, healthy, and active than the others that were told to look after their plant. And also, even more worryingly, 30% of the residents who had not looked after their plant had died, compared to only 15% of those who had been allowed to exercise such control. The message of the study was clear. Those who do not feel in control of their lives are less successful and less psychologically and physically healthy than those who do feel they're in control. On a personal level, I already feel like I'm benefiting myself from recording these book podcasts. I just finished reading the introduction, which was about 4.5 pages, and I managed to extract that little interesting study, the Harvard study about the house plant, and I feel like I will be able to save you guys time from reading books, and then you can just get the interesting information from these book podcasts. So we all win. I win by actually having accountability and having a sort of purpose for reading these books, because I get to share the interesting bits with you guys, and you save time having to read these books, or not even having the chance to read these books or knowing about these books, but still getting some interesting information from them. Chapter 1, Happiness. Why is it important to be happy? Well, for one thing, by definition, you will feel better. However, there is more to it than that. Happiness does not just make you enjoy life more, it actually affects how successful you are in both your personal and professional life. Happiness makes people more sociable and altruistic. It increases how much people like themselves and others. It improves their ability to resolve conflict, and it strengthens your immune system. The cumulative effect means that people have more satisfying and successful relationships, find especially fulfilling jobs, and live longer, healthier lives. So, what is the best way of putting a long-term smile on your face? The bad news is that research shows that about 50% of your overall sense of happiness is genetically determined and so cannot be altered. The better news is that another 10% is due to general circumstances that are difficult to change. However, the best news is that the remaining 40% is derived from your day-to-day behavior and the way in which you think about yourself and others. With a little knowledge, this large chunk can be changed quickly, allowing you to become substantially happier in just a few seconds. So, basically, in summary, 50% of your overall sense of happiness is actually from your genes genetically, but 40% is what you do day to day and the things that you focus on, which are in control. So that's almost half. So the usual idea propagated in the self-help industry is to just think more positive, be more positive thinking. But does this actually lead to happiness? No, it doesn't. Because simply pushing negative thoughts out of your mind doesn't actually make you feel happier. The research actually suggests that such thought suppression is actually far more likely to increase rather than decrease misery. In the mid-1980s, Harvard psychologist just happened to come across an obscure but intriguing quote from Dostoevsky's Winter Notes on Summer Impressions. The quote was, "Try to pose for yourself this task, not to think of a polar bear, and you will see that the cursed thing will come to mind every minute." It's also that famous thing, don't think of a pink elephant, and you will be thinking of a pink elephant right now. So this psychologist decided to carry out a simple experiment to discover if this was true. Each person from a group of volunteers was made to sit alone in a room and told to think about anything but not to imagine Dostoevsky's white bear. Everyone was then asked to ring a bell each time the banned bear sprang to mind. Within moments, a cacophony of bells indicated that Dostoevsky was right. Attempts to suppress certain thoughts makes people obsess on the very topic that they are attempting to avoid. So they did a study to test out Dostoevsky's white bear experiment. They told two groups of people. One group of people, they basically told both groups of people to describe their most upsetting thought about themselves, and then half the group were told to spend the next 11 days trying to push this thought out of their minds. The other group were told to just carry on life as normal. And what they found was the people that were actively trying to push this upsetting thought away from their minds were found to be more anxious, more depressed, and had lower self-esteem. So the people that were actively suppressing their negative thoughts were actually thinking about them more, just like Dostoevsky's white bear experiment. But the other group that were just going about their business as usual, they were fine. So, if thought suppression is not the answer, what can you do? One possibility is to distract yourself, doing something creative, working on a new hobby or your hobbies. Although this technique can often provide an effective short-term boost, it will probably not lead to long-term sense of contentment. For that, research suggests that you need to know how to use a pencil, how to keep the perfect diary, how to carry out small acts of kindness, and how to develop the gratitude attitude. So I'm just going to end that there. So that's part 1 of chapter 1. To conclude this episode, I chose a random page which is about persuasion, and he describes a study where 2 groups of children were asked to have fun creating some drawings, but before they were allowed to play with the crayons and paper, one group was told that they would receive an elaborate good player medal for drawing, while the other group were not given the promise of any reward. A few weeks later, the researchers returned, handed out drawing paper and crayons, and measured how much the children played with them. Surprisingly, the children who had received the medals on the first occasion spent significantly less time drawing than their classmates. Why did this happen? The children who were offered the medals thought something along the lines of, well, let me see here. Adults usually offer me rewards when they want me to do something I don't like doing. An adult is offering me a gold medal for drawing, therefore I must not like drawing. This effect has been replicated many times, and the conclusion is clear. If you set children an activity they enjoy and reward them for doing it, the reward reduces the enjoyment and demotivates them. Within a few seconds, you transform play into work. This can also be seen as a sort of allegory to what's happening also with the needlecraft and how people are being rewarded for taking an experimental, I don't want to say the word, but you know what I mean. So it's like, why would you reward me for something that's supposed to be good for me, right? So, food for thought. No pun intended.